gymnastics. As far as the wrestling business, what I did was I intimidated a lot of people because I didn't give a
big gold and a billfold.
All right, I have no idea where we left off, Rip. You remember?
Well, Tommy, I was my whole life I thought your brother Bruce was like 3 years older than you, and
No.
I thought he had the job in Houston, and then you took his place, and that's how you got in.
No. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. I was older, but see, he was smarter than me because he paid attention to what was going on in the office. And I know you know this, probably. You heard about the FIA account, right?
What's the FIA account? Let me see if we called it something else.
Okay, F 'em in the ass account. Okay, I'm trying to save you some editing, Clint.
Okay.
F 'em in the ass account, the skim money.
Okay.
And they called the FIA account.
Wow.
And it was skim money. I didn't pay attention to it and stuff. I didn't care about it.
None of my business, right?
None of my business. But Bruce was becoming an integral part of the office in Houston, and I don't want to mention the other fellow's name, but filled him in and gave
Was that
him
Peter?
Oh, okay.
Was that
You'll
Peter?
say it. Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wondered.
Yeah.
What a shady character, huh?
Well, I always got along with Pete. I mean, because I didn't know any different, didn't care any different,
Right.
wasn't focused on that. But
You wasn't sexually attracted to him, so
not at all. But I hated that office, political, whatever it is. And there wasn't a whole lot of politics. It was just Pete was Paul's nephew, and no worries. But I got along great with him, Bruce and Pete. But Bruce is a different guy than I am too. He had more drive. I had a lot of drive back then. Then I made bad choices. How about that? But it's all on me. And anyway, no, Bruce. After I stopped working in the office and started wrestling, Bruce started working in the office, and he was a ring announcer. He's Paul's assistant as well. And he became pretty smart about the way things worked. And Paul shared a lot more things with him than he did with me. Bruce is the kind of guy who'd go over to Paul's house on a regular basis, just drop in and say hello. I couldn't do that. I mean, I was more of a loner. I was more of a guy who, I had friends like in like everybody, but I was just kind of more like, like you said earlier, when I spoke up, sometimes I thought, I'm giving myself away as a bigger idiot than I appear to be. So I just didn't know I was very socially inept, even though I was in a business that you had to be socially an extrovert. I was very much an introvert. And anyway, no, Bruce did it, and Bruce got a lot more opportunities and did it a lot better than I did. That's for sure. He made a lot more money than I did. That's for damn sure.
Oh, well. All right. Do you guys remember where you guys met? I know you went to Continental eventually. Did you guys meet there? Were you ever there together? Or do you have any idea?
I think it was.
I knew he was working for Fuller. I can't remember.
It was Continental.
Was it 80? See, I was there in 80, 83, 84. Then I was back in 80, 86.
I was there around 86, 87. Yeah, that was it. I think it was it in Continental.
Now, you was like best friends with Brad Armstrong, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I was telling Vaughn here. I said, I ain't never heard a bad word about Dr. Tom or Brad Armstrong. Never.
Yeah, no, but I've always said this: if you couldn't have a match,
oh yes, with Brad,
oh my God, if you couldn't have a match, you didn't belong in this business. So, and then having a match with you, I could believe it, but it was astonishing how light you were, because it was. I work light too, but at the same time, I thought Bob Armstrong works like too. I quit your work. You work like Bob Armstrong, and Bob was so rugged looking and so looked like he'd tear your head off. He would look like all this stuff, and I'm going, oh my God! And I knew Bob for years, but when I worked with him for the first time, I thought, am I doing this right? Because he was so light. And so yeah, it was the same thing with the Armstrongs. You know, if you couldn't have a match with any one of those guys, and I think you really should have thought about being a bricklayer or something.
I told people, I said, I had the best first match I ever had with Brad Armstrong when we'd never been in the ring with anything.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see how good he was.
Yeah.
I'd be going around the ring. As soon as I slowed down, he mirrored everything. He kept that buffer zone with everything.
Yeah.
And even as a heel, if I went after him, he would take a step back and he's always in a fighting stance.
Yes.
With
yes.
legs bent, proper and everything. And I'm just fucking laughing.
Yeah.
And then I would grab a hold. If we'd tie up, he would not grab a hold unless I told him.
Right.
He just continued to struggle with this, the lock up and blah, blah, blah. And it was just so much. And I'm laughing. He don't know why I'm laughing.
Well,
the match was over, and I said, Brad, you are so fucking good. Everything about wrestling, that's the way it's supposed to be.
I think he was a natural. He had that innate ability. He had those instincts and a second nature about it. And that's I don't believe you can teach that. You can talk about it and you acquire it. You can keep striving to get there, but you have to have those instincts. And Brad had them, and I believe all the Armstrongs had them. They had that instinct and that feel, and knowing without saying a word. Brad and I would have matches where we wouldn't have to say anything. We did it just for fun too. Go out there and you shoot him off the ropes. He would know if I'm going to take a tackle or give him a hip toss. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a tackle or a drop down or a move, whatever the move was, even if it was a scoop slam. We've done that a few times. And just read the body language.
That's right.
So fun.
And you're a half second early of telegraphing, and he knows he's whatever it is, he's going to counter it. And it's up to him what he's going to do, but you got to go with the flow of what the counter is.
Go with the flow.
Oh,
exactly.
That's why wrestling was the fucking greatest.
It was, especially when you had that going and when you could feel it and just and the instincts. Terry Funk did that a lot. Dream did that a lot. And the greats did that. The Harley Races of the world and the Funks. Dory and Terry both. So yeah, man, Brad and a lot of those guys were like that back then. The last time I did that was in Atlanta when at Deep South Wrestling with William Regal, who came just to watch the class. Regal had been there. We'd done it was whatever it was, 3-4 hour class. After the class, me and him were in the ring. And some of the guys were outside, and he just started circling me. He just started walking towards me. I started working. We're just playing, just working back. You know how sometimes in the ring you just start circling the guy or going towards the guy. So I started circling with him, and then he stopped and just went to lock up. He made the first move, and I just followed after that. And it was the same thing. We didn't say a word. I never worked with him before. Never worked with him in public. But it's one of those things. If you just follow body language and have some kind of instinct for this, it can be done.
That's awesome.
Let me tell you this. Now we're talking about Regal, right?
Yes.
Okay. You know how he got to the States?
No.
We were wrestling. We were in working for Big Fat Otto Vons in Austria and Germany. And me and him would always stay in the caravan or the hostel together.
Yeah.
So he's telling me all the stories. So Fitz there and Dave Taylor's there too. And so was Tony St. Clair.
Yeah.
But I said, you want to go to WCW? He says, what? I said, you want to go to WCW? He goes, hell yeah. I said, get you a piece of paper and a pencil. I had him write. I said, how's your handwriting? He wrote like a girl. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I write like a doctor. You can't read it. So, and I dictated what he should write. He sent a fucking letter to Watts. Within 2 weeks, he got a call from Watts.
Yeah.
Well, Watts called his wife his wife contacted him because we'd call home once a week, whether we needed it or not.
Right.
And if you don't answer the phone, it's going to be another week. Whatever, if somebody dies, handle it. That's the way it was. There wasn't no cell phones, right?
Right.
So he got as soon as he left Otto and them, that's where he come in. Then he got Fit in, and then he got Dave Taylor in. And I was trying to get, and then Ole was back, and I said, Ole, I think I seen the greatest heel I ever seen. I said, his name's Fit Finley. He goes, how big is he? I said, fuck, I don't know, Ole. I never paid. I didn't pay any attention to it. I didn't need to. I was mesmerized with how good he was.
Yeah.
He goes, it couldn't have been very big then. Well.
Yeah. There was a lot of narrow-mindedness back then too, because you had to be a big guy to be a star. And
right.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think Lawler and Dundee proved that wrong. So did some other guys later on, that you could be a star. It didn't matter. It's about the perception. It was about the attitude. It was about the body language, the feeling, everything you did. You didn't have to be 7 feet tall. Daniel Bryan had 70,000 people going, yes, 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 yes. He wasn't a big guy either. Neither was, neither were a lot of the top stars in the business back then.
The funny thing about this is we're on this podcast and we got a passion for the pro wrestling business. We love this shit. I'd rather do this than any other. I don't give a shit about being a Major League Baseball, NBA superstar, a porn star, NFL, this or that. I just wanted to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
and
no matter what your styles is, if you love pro wrestling, you're over with me. We don't have to have the same styles.
Right.
Because you can only have a style of something you've experienced.
Something
right.
We've seen. I mean, we can't necessarily fault the kids today, because you can't choose when you're born. You can't choose what culture you're grown into or thrown into. But the thing that I've always said is the basics and fundamentals never go out of style. And that means you have to have something to stand on first. Then you can do the rest of the cool stuff. You can do cool stuff. Jimmy Snuka was one of the first guys I saw dive off the top rope. Remember when he came to Houston? And man, he did that splash, and like nobody had ever seen it before. It was brand new and awesome. Then guys started doing the frog splash. Then guys started improving on that or expanding on that, whatever it is. Okay, that's all good. But it all really starts from circling, or at least the bell ringing, and a lockup. And then you go from there. If you don't, and you just start super kicking people, you just go out there and just start doing stuff, then you're just doing stuff. If you don't do it with any feeling or emotion, it means absolutely nothing. And people don't even understand how to put that in these days. You don't have to talk to anybody to go out on a date. Just go to Tinder. Or whatever it is, you go to.
Do Bumble, because the girls choose you first in Bumble.
Okay.
Oh yeah. See, if you go Tinder, the guy's begging first, right? And then the girl's got to say okay. But on Bumble, the girl's already said yes. Oh, here's Dr. Tom. I want to do him. And it's up to you.
Well, I've never had the opportunity to go to any of these things, but I have had people tell me about the dating apps these days and tell me how out of touch I am, because you don't have to get to know anybody these days. You just go on the app. So that was the difference. I mean, when you didn't have all this technology and all these things, you had to communicate. You had to connect with the crowd, with the fans, the audience, whoever was watching. Because if you didn't connect, they're not going to come. If they don't come, you're not going to get paid. There's no business. If they're not watching your product, then how are you going to get known? And these days it's a little it's a quicker pace, and that's because the world's at a quicker pace. You get your news cycle, lasts 3 days, I guess, whatever it is, but then it goes away and something else comes along. But that problem doesn't necessarily go away. It's still there, just nobody's reporting on it. You forget about it, so you get this new problem, a new issue, and that goes, and it goes on to the next one. So same thing. I mean, that's what a lot of people see, and that's what a lot of people grew up with in the last 30 years at least. And so how do you make wrestling interesting again? Who are your Austins? Who are your Lesnars? Who are your Rocks? Who are your Mankinds? Who are your Shawn Michaels, Triple H's? The guys that really elicited emotion from the people, who got people to cheer, boo, cry. Eddie Guerrero, where's your Eddie Guerreros? Where are the guys where John Bradshaw Layfield come out and John's John, and he is so entertaining backstage. You just let him go. But some people interpret that differently. Some people say, oh, he's being a bully. No, he's looking for you to bully him back, or he's looking for you to talk back. He's looking for a promo back. All you got to do is promo back. And I don't think John legitimately wants to go in and was picking on anybody unless the guy was being a jerk. But he would that but guys did that back then. It was that kind of business.
Hey,
play with each other back and forth.
I've been out of the country. The Nasty Boys come into WCW.
Yeah.
They go, here's a new one. He grabbed me. They said, let's fuck him. Right. So I said, oh, wait a minute. Back off, Tubbo. Both of you. I said, I turned around, pulled my fucking pants down, spread my goddamn fucking cheeks. I said, you're going to fuck me. You fuck me like a man.
Right.
And I gave it the old, this guy's crazy. This guy's crazy. Mr. Barnett, Mr. Barnett.
Right. Exactly. As long as you knew how to mess around back. Well, yeah. But nobody gets that these days. Everybody gets butthurt over little things on Twitter or Facebook or the Instagram and all this other crap. We didn't have that to do with. We had to make our own entertainment backstage with each other and have that fun. And if you didn't get it, then again, I'll say this. Then maybe this wasn't the place for you to be.
Hey,
That's the thing.
Everybody in the wrestling business, I'm thinking back, we were all missing a card. We were all we were criminals. Eddie Haskell's, Dennis the Menace, the guy trying to screw as many girls as they could, cheating on the test. We were going through life trying to have a good time. Get real.
Yeah. Well, I'm not advocating all those traits, but
hell, I am.
But my point is, you're right. You're missing a deck, missing a couple cards, or missing a card. Some didn't even have a deck. Right. I mean, there was empty space up there to be filled with chicanery and tomfoolery and such. But it wasn't an outlaw business. It was a wild west business. We romanticize it a lot and people are appalled, but good God Almighty, there was a society where only people like Rip, myself, Buddy Rose, Ed Wiskowski, a Piper, people like that didn't belong in polite society, didn't belong in the masses because they were outside the lines. They were way outside the line and sometimes way past crossing the line. And that's what made these guys so special. When you saw them come to the ring, you knew they weren't your average bear. They knew they weren't your next door neighbor who was, hey, can I mow your lawn today? And, then have these other things happening in their private life that they wouldn't share with people because they had to keep this image up here. No, those guys went out and had this outrageous image and they got it all out on stage, but also in the back. It continued. And then on the way home, the greatest stories happen on the way home. Grapple in the gravel. Tracy Smothers and I got in a fight on the side of the road coming back from a town over stupid stuff. How do you do? I'm not a fighter. I'm not a tough guy, but it's a great story because it actually happened. It really happened. And I can embellish it all I want, but the fact is, oh yeah. Real quick. Okay. So in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, WCW, Bill Watts had just gone to WCW, as you talked about earlier. He had good relationship with Cornette. We were going to do a talent exchange because they were close by. So he booked we did an angle with the Rock and Roll Express, Heavenly Bodies, Stan Lane and myself, and Bobby Eaton was there with us. Did Super Brawl in Asheville, Carolina, North Carolina, wherever it was. Anyway, we're supposed to do these things. So we get the pay-per-view. Well, that pisses some people off, obviously, because why are they using them? What about us? What about us? Well, it was about the whole territory, but then Watts got fired before it happened, before it all came to happen. Right after that, my dad came to visit. Bruce called Cornette and wanted to rib me and have my dad on a promo. And I don't want to put my dad on a promo, because I didn't know what he was going to say. I didn't know. But Jimmy goes, hey, look, we're going to rib Bruce. So we do the promo, with my dad, me, Cornette, and Jimmy Del Rey. And Jimmy's talking about wrestling these days. And, we do professional wrestling. My dad goes, I just want to let you know, we're so proud of what you guys are doing for professional wrestling. Smoky Mountain's the greatest. And and Jimmy says, what about your other son? What does he do? He goes, we don't talk about him.
Oh God, that's awesome.
He does that. He does that phony stuff in the WWF and all this other crap, right? So Cornette, goes on with the promo. We finish it. He sends it to Bruce. So Bruce puts it in with Pat Patterson and some other The Office people and watching it. And he didn't know what he was going to say. He thought it was a rib on me. He's going to show them this. But anyway, so he laughs and he calls Cornette and says, you ribbed me. And didn't, I had people watching this and all this other stuff. Well, they were watching it because they needed a spokesman for Yokozuna. Well, okay. They call us and say, how would you guys like to do a match in Detroit for the WWF titles against the Steiners, their hometown and all this stuff? Well, sure we would. Of course, WCW is not in the picture, so let's do it with WWF. So we go, and the first time we show up at TV, I knew they wanted Cornette. That if they wanted us, we would have known because we weren't setting any kind of records at all as far as drawing. So, okay, we get our tag. We do the pay-per-views. Supposed to be one-off against Steiners. Then they're going to do Survivor Series. What about you and the Rock and Roll Express? Okay, great. We do the Rock and Roll Express. Now, Survivor Series, Thanksgiving. In between these times of where we got booked in WCW to where we're getting booked now, Tracy Smothers is in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. We were living in Nashville in the beginning, and when Smoky Mountain first started, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Dirty White Boy, myself, and Tracy would rent a van, drive from Nashville to Knoxville. During those car trips, I would kind of poke the bear with Tracy, and just play around. But Tracy and Tracy, wasn't always sure if I was kidding or ribbing. And and Ricky told me one time, he says, that boy's gonna snap on you. I said, no, he's fine. He knows I'm ribbing. All right. So in between the WCW bookings and the WWE, WWF, Tracy kind of had been potatoing people left and right. Just he was just off. He was going through a couple of weeks of, just having these kind of matches. And before we left, he had popped Brian Lee in the eye, split Brian's eye open, wide open, his eyelid and stuff. And so we were coming back. We just flown back into Knoxville for the Thanksgiving show after Survivor Series. We stopped at Cracker Barrel 8, and I'm riding with, it's Del Rey and me riding with Ricky and Robert. Ricky had his car there. I'm going to catch a ride back with Brian Lee, and Jimmy's going to catch a ride back to Morristown with somebody else. So in the car, I don't remember what brought it up, but I said, Tracy is a freaking idiot, and you can quote me. Well, we're going to the town. We get there that night. 2 separate locker rooms. So we go in there, and Tracy's working with Brian this night. And Brian goes to the ring. Tracy's out there, and he's upset about something. He's not working the match, right? And we have a battle royal at the end of the night. And I'm out there watching. Cornette's out there watching. We see the match kind of going downhill, and Tracy's looking back at me going, pointing his finger. I go, oh, hell. So We get back to the back, and Brian comes back and says, I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. And I said, I do. Let me tell you what I said.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Ricky was back in
stirring that pot.
Stirring the pot. And I knew it. So we got the battle royal. So I said, oh, Christ. And now me and Del Rey are supposed to go into angle with Tracy and Dirty White Boy. So we go in the battle royal. And here comes Tracy, going to charge, trying to get at me. And all the boys are holding back. I said, no, let him go. Let him get out of that system. Let him get out of the system now. It'll be done. Leave it alone. He can hit me, do whatever he wants. That's whatever. Well, they held him back. It screwed up the battle royal. Cornette's pissed. Everybody's pissed. Okay. So Brian and I get on the road. We stop. We get our beer. We're riding back. And we see, yeah, we got, yeah. So we see rock and roll and those guys on the side of the road taking a whiz. And I say, Brian, pull over. Let's get this out. Let's get this straight. Let's get it straightened out now. Tracy was with him. He said, no, just leave it alone. So we keep going. Well, they come up behind us and pass us. I said, that's them. Please blink your lights, pull them over. So he blinks his lights, they pull over. So Ricky's driving, Robertson in the passenger seat. Tracy's in the back seat. He had hurt his ankle that night. Well, they pull over, they get out. As soon as I get out, Tracy sees me and he goes, oh, son of a bitch, he's trying to get out of the car. So he gets out of the car. And he comes over and says, listen, man, I'm going to kick your ass, man, you son of a bitch. So Tracy, I know what the hell you're so hot. And then he goes, yeah, fuck you, man. I'll tell you, talk about me behind my back, you son of a. And look at Ricky. I said, thanks, man. And Ricky pushes me. I had a beer bottle in my hand. I threw it at him. I missed him by a country mile. I could hit the side of a barn. Well, so anyway, we get in a little argument, but now Tracy and me are facing off in front of the cars. And Tracy's looking, and it's one of those things to where one guy doesn't want to fight and the other guy's glad of it. And I'm not sure which one I was, but I'm glad I was one. Then all of a sudden we lock up.
Oh, okay.
But it's a lockup, a working lockup. And then I went, oh, he doesn't want to fight. And I damn sure didn't want to fight. I go, because if he wanted to fight, he would have went 1-2 or a one punch would have took me out. I know that. I wasn't expecting to be a tough guy. Well, and I swear this is all true. In the process of this is on a 4-lane road, whatever it is, coming back from Kentucky, whatever town. A car had stopped, and Ricky had said, "Get your ass out of here, I won't use the C word, but that's what he used." Okay.
Thank you.
And they went up. Well, as soon as Tracy and I are scuffling, there's the blue lights pull up behind us. Okay. So we stop. Tracy goes, look, you got kids. I got kids. We can't go to jail tonight. Cut it. We'll settle this tomorrow. What? Okay. So as we go behind where the cops are, says, what do you got? What's going on here? So, we just wrestled down the road. We thought about some spots we want to do in our match. We pulled over to do it. He goes, you don't do that in my county. You got 15 seconds. Get out of here. You're going to jail, all of you. Yes, sir. We got in our car. We left. I go home and call Cornette and tell him what happened. So I'm not getting in the ring with him, man, until we settle this. So I don't want to be in the ring with him where he's out of his mind. So Jimmy's going, oh, Christ. The next day in Morristown, we have promos. I got there early. I went to the babyface locker room. They were doing promos first. I'm waiting for them to come back. I'm going to get with Tracy. Either say, here, let's settle it now. Just hit me. Do what you got to do. Do what you want to do. Get out of your system. Well, he came back, looked at me. Man, I'm so sorry about last night. I love you. Come here, man. What? So, but we hugged and all. Hey, look, Tracy. And I said, I did talk shit about you. I apologize for that, but you have been crazy lately. You have been punching people in the face, potatoes and everything. I apologize for talking about you behind your back, but I did it, and I'm sorry. So that's things like that. Who could be? It could be embellished, blown up, whatever you want whatever you want to do about it. But those are stories that actually happen. That's how it gets around. Ricky's told that story a few times too. And he admits, he goes, yeah, I was stirring the pot. Boy, I said, no shit, you were. But it was my fault because I said it. I took responsibility.
That's awesome. So he wasn't really ribbing you. He didn't really take it out on you in the ring or anything like that.
No, he wasn't ribbing me at all. He was hot. I mean, Tracy
I mean
hot.
when he said he apologized, he didn't.
He wasn't ribbing me. No.
Okay.
Tracy knew he was kind of hot headed, and man, he punched lockers in dressing room, locker room, and he would go around. You know, he was a raw bone, kind of crazy East Tennessee.
He was missing a card like the rest of us.
He was missing a few cards. Yeah. He was just like the rest of us. I wasn't better. Yeah, it was crazy, man. But,
so I know, like, too, you were in the USWA and other places, and you mentioned WWF. Was that always your ultimate goal to get there? I mean, Rip really didn't give a shit one way or the other. You've been around for quite a while. Was that your goal, or just kind of happened?
Well, it just kind of happened. I never, especially when Bruce went, there was that thought of, well, okay, maybe, but then again, they were using giants.
Yeah.
And I really knew that. And look, for the longest time, I never had the confidence or the belief, even though I knew I could do this, but the confidence is something you have to have. And this is something else I've learned. And I have to tell everybody, you have to have confidence. Number one, you got to believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, just fake it until you do and keep doing it every day. It's an attitude thing. And, I never thought there was a time when I was blowing Bruce's phone up. I was. And then all of a sudden I realized that's not the way to go about it. Yeah. So I accepted my fate. I'll work in Memphis the rest of my life, or I'll work in territories the rest of my life. And it just so happened that they were looking for, again, a spokesman for Yokozuna, and Cornette was available. Or he wasn't available, but he was a great talker. And why wouldn't he be open to, and that's what it originally started being, talent exchange. Yeah. Get some guys from down there. They got Glenn from down there. They got Batista, Cena. Well, that was later on OVW, but in Smoky Mountain, there were guys, and there was a place. Glenn was there, Glenn Jacobs, Al Snow was there. So why not have a talent exchange? So that just happened. And then the first time I wrestled in Madison Square Garden, we wrestled the match against the Bushwhackers, WrestleMania 10. And I'm walking in, and it's not that I expected anything different, but it was just a big old wrestling arena. It was a big old Coliseum. It was Madison Square Garden, but it wasn't nothing special like you see today. It was an older building. They've been around forever, but it was wrestling. And you go, well, have you ever wrestled in the Garden? Yeah. So it just happened. That's where I go back to being so fortunate and lucky that it did.
That's awesome. Yeah. You've talked about that too. Just didn't really matter where.
Whether it was a parking lot at Bobby Fulton show.
Yeah.
And you was working in a parking lot, and people would have lounge chairs around there, or a stool to sit on, or they'd just be standing, or any other, or in the Superdome or whatever. It's the same. It's the same old shit. You get the same rush.
Yeah.
And to a smaller audience, your work is better because they're closer, and you want to pop them because you want to make them believe.
Yep.
And you can really interact with. There's so few people. You get, as a heel, you can pick on somebody and just get on their ass, and you have the time of your life.
Yeah, well, that's when you could be a heel. These days, you have to be careful about body shaming or just shaming or being mean to people, because you can't say, hey, your shoes are ugly. You'll make people cry.
Oh.
And a lot of people don't like, I think people like to be cool, and like these days a cool heel more than
a heel. That's not a heel. That's just a cool guy thinking he's a bad guy. And, hey, you're going to love me because I'm a bad guy. No, not necessarily. I'm going to hate you because you're trying to play a bad guy. Be a bad guy if you're going to be a bad guy. That's the other thing. There were real bad guys in this business back then. There were some guys who were really not, keep missing a card, but okay. Johnny Valentine had some various habits and things that he used to do afterwards that I heard about later on, and I'm going, what? But then again, I'm going, okay.
Were you ever around Joe LeDuc?
No.
No. I remember as a kid going to Louisville Gardens, and Joe LeDuc was on the card, and I was scared to death of him from watching him on Channel 3 Wrestling. And they announced that night that Joe LeDuc was not going to be there. And I was so relieved as a kid that he wasn't there, because I was terrified of Joe LeDuc.
Well, yeah. There were some guys that I believed in, even as I was getting closer to being in the business. The Sheik, Eddie Farhat. Man, when I was working ringside with Paul, they had Sheik come in, and he doesn't speak English. He doesn't. He's from the Middle East, and he's only speaks Arabic, and he's this wide guy, and they had to get a snake for him. Well, I'm Paul's assistant, and I have to take the snake handlers back to the little hallway right before the door in the dressing room. And so she comes out and he goes, wow, that's a big GD snake. I'll say that for you. You don't have to edit.
It's okay.
He said, wow, that's a big goddamn snake. What did you just say? You know what I mean? And I know, but I don't know. And I'm starting to figure it out, but yeah, he speaks in English. You have to speak English, how to communicate. And then I realized, he owned Detroit, and I realized at that stage he was getting older, and that's why he was stabbing the guys and doing those kind of matches now. I get that. But then I was just saying, oh, this guy's out of his mind. Even by that time, I was a little smarter than I was as a kid. I still hadn't been able to put it together. They still hadn't told me, but I knew there was something to it. They just hadn't given me the key yet.
It's awesome. Did you guys ever cross paths when you were training? I know you were in FCW, and
Tommy was my boss.
He was your boss? Okay.
Yeah, when I was down at OVW, I had to send a lesson plan into Tom each day.
Yeah. And I still have some of those because it was, and I still go by that schedule because he had everything timed out, the body part, everything timed out, everything boom, scheduled. And I said this, I do a podcast on Wednesday nights. I said, it's called Taking You to School. You can go back and listen to it. It's this week. Where they asked me about OVW. I said, I thought it was one of the best developmental systems, especially at that time, because we had HWA too, but OVW stood out head and shoulders above the rest because of the meticulous detail. It was taken to the little nuggets of information. While Rip didn't always have a joker or an ace up his sleeve, he always had that element that nobody else had. The communication and the delivery could be rough around the edges, but it didn't matter. If you listen to the message and you got it, then you'll get it. And I tell people this all the time. I said, look, when you said you're one of the nicest guys in business, I tell them I'm a pussycat compared to what's out there. I really, really am. Some people aren't going to tell you you stink on ice. If you're not told that you can't, or you're not told you're doing it wrong, then you'll think you're doing it right every time. You need criticism, critiques. You need constructive criticism. And I watched OVW's training. It was one of my favorite places to go, especially during that time, because it was Rip, it was Danny, it was Jim Cornette. It was everybody there who had this attitude that professional wrestling is not just it's not an art form, although it is, but it's a lot more complicated and complex than people think it is. But once you get to understand it, you go, makes sense. So when you're looking at it from an outsider's view, you've never done it. You don't know why we work the left side. You don't know why we step this way. You don't know why there's that gap in between. You don't know why the flow happens. You don't understand what a flow is. You don't understand how you get the timing.
Gymnastics. As far as the wrestling business, what I did was I intimidated a lot of people because I didn't give a
big gold and a billfold, so swole that I can't get the shit closed. So I money.